Breaking news from Windsor tonight. The kind of headline that makes even long-time royal watchers sit up straight. While King Charles struggles to contain public backlash over his brother Prince Andrew, Princess Anne has quietly, but decisively, stepped into the spotlight. Not with words, not with a statement, but with a symbol. During last night's state reception, the Princess Royal arrived wearing a diamond tiara so rare, so historically charged, that it sent shockwaves through every royal newsroom in London. A crown once linked to Queen Mary herself, unseen in public for decades, until now. The timing, observers say, was no coincidence. The royal household has been navigating its most fragile moment since the passing of the late Queen Elizabeth. Charles is facing growing unease from the public, his approval ratings slipping, as critics question his judgment in handling the Andrew controversy. And just when the palace seemed to be bracing for another storm, Anne appeared, calm, poised, impeccably silent, yet speaking volumes. Social media exploded within minutes. Commentators called it the comeback of the century. One insider described the moment as a thunderclap wrapped in diamonds, while others saw it as a deliberate act of reassurance, a reminder that amidst scandal and uncertainty, one royal still represents duty without drama. But behind the sparkle, there's a deeper undertone. According to a senior aide, who spoke to the Daily Telegraph under condition of anonymity, the tiara Anne chose was not a random selection from the vaults. It was the Queen's personal favourite, reserved for moments of continuity, the aide said. Anne knew exactly what she was doing. The message, subtle but powerful, tradition endures, even when leadership wavers. Inside Buckingham, the mood was reportedly tense. Camilla, insiders say, was visibly unsettled by Anne's appearance. The Queen Consort, who has been struggling to win over public affection, suddenly found herself overshadowed by a woman who said nothing at all. It was a silent reminder of hierarchy, one court correspondent noted. In that moment, Anne didn't need a title. She had legacy. For years, the Princess Royal has been the hardest working member of the family, clocking more engagements annually than any of her siblings. While Charles debates modernization and William experiments with strategy, Anne simply shows up. That unshakable consistency has turned her into something of a moral compass for the institution. And now, with the monarchy wobbling under the weight of scandal, her quiet strength has become the story. Royal watchers were quick to draw parallels to her late mother. Elizabeth used jewellery as language, said historian Dr. Marianne Holt. A brooch meant solidarity, pearls meant mourning, and a crown like that, it meant command. If that tradition holds, then Anne's diamond tiara last night was a declaration of loyalty to the throne, but not necessarily to those who currently hold it. Public reaction has been extraordinary. Within hours, hashtags like #AnneTheAnchor and #DiamondMessage were trending across X and TikTok. Even critics of the monarchy admitted the moment had gravity. It felt like reassurance from the old guard, one user wrote. For the first time since the Queen's death, someone looked like they knew what they were doing. Yet not everyone is convinced this was a mere coincidence. A palace source close to Clarence House hinted that Anne's move might have been coordinated, or perhaps quietly tolerated, by William and Catherine themselves. Let's just say, certain family members are grateful she did it, the insider said. It sent the message they couldn't. Still, the question remains, was this act of loyalty or quiet defiance? Did Anne step in to protect the monarchy or to remind it who still holds its moral weight? As the palace continues to fend off questions about Andrew, about image, and about internal stability, one thing is clear. The Princess Royal has just changed the tone of the conversation. And tonight, across Britain's living rooms, people aren't asking what the king will do next. They're asking what Anne knows. Because when the silent one makes a move this deliberate, it's never accidental. But that, insiders whisper, may only be the first step in a plan that's been in motion for months. A plan quietly coordinated from Sandringham, with two allies by her side. the Prince and Princess of Wales. And if the rumours are true, last night's diamonds were not a statement, they were a signal. The palace corridors have gone quiet, but it's that kind of silence that hums with strategy. Just days after the Tiara moment shook Britain's morning headlines, whispers began leaking from Sandringham. Princess Anne wasn't simply filling in for her brother, she was moving pieces on the board. Multiple royal correspondents confirmed that Anne held a private meeting with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, earlier this month. Officially, it was listed as a brief family consultation. But according to sources who spoke to The Times and The Mirror, the agenda was far more deliberate. It wasn't a family catch-up, one insider revealed. It was logistics planning, restructuring, containment. The words planning and containment, unusual for a royal conversation, have sparked an avalanche of speculation. Is Anne quietly stabilizing the monarchy from within? The situation was delicate. King Charles, still reeling from criticism over Andrew's settlement and mounting public frustration, had reportedly withdrawn from several key appearances. His absence left a vacuum Anne has instinctively filled. "She's been doing this since the 70s, said a former equerry. "When things fall apart, she doesn't panic, she works." That work, however, now carries a different tone. The Princess Royal's movements in recent weeks show a clear pattern. Discreet meetings, restructured engagements, and what aides are calling a gold operation, a subtle realignment of royal duties to ensure stability while the king recalibrates. At Sandringham, the meeting between Anne and Catherine was described by one staff member as tense but hopeful. Over tea, the two women reportedly discussed how to preserve public trust while Charles retreated from the spotlight. Anne emphasized continuity, the staffer said. She told the Princess of Wales, "You're the future, but the present still needs to hold." Observers see this as a defining moment between two generations of royal women, one carrying the old code of duty, the other embodying a modern brand of grace. Their alliance, though rarely public, appears increasingly tactical. "Catherine and Anne speak the same unspoken language," a senior court official commented. "Discipline, not drama." According to documents reviewed by the Daily Mail, the royal household has quietly reassigned certain engagements to Anne's office. Events initially scheduled for the king are now being executed under her supervision, with William and Catherine occasionally joining to project unity. It's an understated reshuffle, one that insiders are calling Operation Steadfast Crown. Behind the scenes, that shift has created ripples. Camilla's team, palace sources claim, was taken aback when Anne's name appeared on the updated engagement roster. "There's a growing sense that Anne is now the default stabilizer," said one insider. "It's not about rebellion, it's about reliability. She's the one everyone trusts to show up." Still, for a family that thrives on image, the optics are hard to ignore. Footage of Anne arriving at a rural charity event, smiling, boots dusty, sleeves rolled contrasted sharply with images of Camilla attending a private art gala in London. "It told its own story," said royal analyst Rebecca Hall. "Duty versus diversion. People noticed the difference." Meanwhile, William has reportedly backed Anne's initiative behind closed doors. He's said to have praised her unflinching steadiness and encouraged his wife to stay in close coordination with the Princess Royal. Catherine, known for her discretion, is believed to have found in Anne a mentor figure, someone who knows exactly how to survive the royal machine without letting it consume her. Public perception seems to echo that sentiment. Polls conducted by YouGov suggest that confidence in the monarchy rises whenever Anne appears on official duty. Commentators have begun dubbing her the emergency monarch, a nickname that both amuses and unnerves palace aides. "She doesn't seek the throne," one said, "but she holds the crown's credibility." Yet beneath the calm surface, a quiet power shift may already be taking shape. Insiders hint that Anne's gold operation was formally approved by Clarence House through an informal memo, a rare act of delegation that effectively places her in charge of maintaining visibility while the king focuses on damage control. "It's not an abdication," said one veteran correspondent, "but it's definitely a redistribution of authority." The symbolism hasn't gone unnoticed. During a recent engagement in Edinburgh, Anne was photographed wearing a small diamond brooch once owned by her mother. Subtle, elegant, but to royal historians, unmistakable. "It's the same brooch the Queen wore after the Windsor fire in 1992, noted Dr. Holt. "That was her way of saying, 'We rebuild.' Anne knows the message she's sending." And that message seems to resonate with Catherine's quiet composure. Together, they form a contrast to the increasingly beleaguered king and the guarded queen consort. Two women, two generations, one objective: to keep the monarchy steady until the storm passes. But is this newfound alliance purely practical, or something more deliberate? As whispers of internal coordination grow louder, one question dominates royal circles tonight. Is the Princess Royal simply managing the crisis or engineering the future? Because if this is the Operation Steadfast Crown insiders describe, then last week's tiara wasn't just a reminder of legacy, it was a prelude. And the next move sources say will happen where every royal secret begins and ends, inside the quiet drawing rooms of Sandringham. The story now moves behind closed doors to Sandringham House, where history often breathes louder than conversation. According to palace staff, that is where the meeting happened. Not a formal audience, not even a scheduled strategy session, but something far more consequential. Princess Anne arrived early, before the morning fog lifted, while Catherine came discreetly later, avoiding photographers. No aides, no equerries, no cameras, just two women at the centre of Britain's most fragile institution, seated across from each other with the weight of legacy between them. Insiders described the atmosphere as measured, not sentimental. Anne, always brisk, spoke first. "If the crown wants to survive," she reportedly said, "it needs to remember what made it work in the first place. Discipline, not apology." Those words, relayed by a staffer who overheard fragments through the corridor, set the tone. The Princess Royal wasn't there to reminisce, she was there to realign. Catherine listened quietly, taking notes on a small pad, an image that, according to one aide, felt more like a boardroom than a tea room. The topic: the monarchy's trajectory after Charles. "It's not about succession," Anne allegedly clarified. "It's about survivability." She reminded Catherine that the monarchy's strength had never come from popularity, but from consistency. And right now, consistency was what Britain was craving most. Over the course of 90 minutes, the conversation reportedly moved through a series of pointed themes: public fatigue, media aggression, and the need to redefine royal duty for a post-scandal era. Sources with knowledge of the meeting confirmed the phrase, "three pillars," was used Anne's term for a new working alignment between herself, William, and Catherine. "They are the stabilizers," a court insider told The Guardian. "Charles provides the crown, but they hold the frame." End thing. One particularly striking account came from a senior housekeeper who claimed that before leaving, Anne took off her gloves, set them beside her teacup, and carefully removed her brooch, placing it directly in front of Catherine. "That gesture silenced the room," she said. "It was symbolic, the same brooch she wore at her mother's coronation tribute, passing the message without a single word." Royal watchers have been quick to interpret that moment as the start of what's now being dubbed the Sandringham Accord, an unspoken alliance between generations, Anne representing legacy, Catherine representing longevity. Together, they form what one palace analyst called the continuity bridge. What's fascinating is how little of this coordination appears on paper. No press releases, no briefings, no Instagram posts. Instead, Anne and Catherine have been subtly syncing their schedules, appearing at complementary events, avoiding overlap, and reinforcing each other's visibility. "It's choreography," said royal commentator Simon Eldridge. Every step looks spontaneous, but it's rehearsed in the shadows. To the public, this partnership appears effortless. Catherine's warmth tempers Anne's rigidity. Anne's authority shields Catherine from criticism. Together, they project an image of controlled calm, a contrast to the uncertainty swirling around Charles's leadership and Camilla's public standing. Even the smallest details tell a story. During a hospital visit in mid-June, Catherine wore a sapphire pin identical to one Anne sported in Edinburgh the week before. To most viewers, it was a coincidence. To those who follow royal semiotics, it was a clear echo of unity, two women, one message, stability. But perhaps the most revealing account comes from a leaked diary entry, allegedly written by a senior aide. They're planning for endurance. The Princess Royal says this is not a sprint, but a rebuild. The Princess of Wales agrees her role will outlast the noise. It's that quiet rebuilding that has reignited fascination among royal commentators. Historian Dr. Holt described the meeting as a rare convergence of conviction. She elaborated, Anne has always operated by code loyalty first, noise last. Catherine's learned that rhythm. What's remarkable is that together, they're recalibrating the monarchy's pulse. As news of the meeting spread, public response was overwhelmingly positive. Online forums buzzed with admiration. Two women saving the monarchy while the men argue in circles. Another wrote, they don't need crowns, they wear duty like armor. Still, not everyone inside the palace is comfortable. Camilla's advisors, according to the Daily Express, view the alliance as a shadow cabinet of sorts, quietly shaping public perception while sidelining the Queen Consort's team. They underestimate Anne at their peril, one veteran royal correspondent warned. She's been through scandal, fire, and decades of protocol. If she's moving now, it's with precision. The optics at Sandringham that day linger in royal memory. A single security camera, according to reports, caught a fleeting image. Anne standing, Catherine rising beside her, and the glint of the diamond brooch resting on the table between them before the frame cut out. The footage, quietly archived, has never been released, but its existence has become a kind of modern myth among palace staff. As dusk settled over the estate, Anne reportedly paused at the doorway, turning back only once. "Keep it steady," she said simply. Catherine nodded. It was not an order, it was a pact. And as that door closed, the meaning of royal silence shifted once again. For decades, Anne had been the family's quiet workhorse. Now, her silence had become something else entirely. A weapon of control, honed and precise. But that newfound alignment, this fragile bridge between the steadfast and the successor, would soon be tested. Because in London, another force was already stirring. Camilla, the Queen Consort, was preparing her own response. And this time, she wasn't planning to stay silent. London's air felt heavier that week, crisp autumn light, yet charged with the hum of something brewing inside the palace. For months, the public had been treated to images of unity. Catherine's poised smiles, Anne's calm precision, William's quiet resolve. But insiders whispered that the Queen Consort was no longer comfortable standing in the background. After weeks of seeing her name fade beneath the gleam of Anne's tiara and the effortless popularity of the Waleses, Camilla was ready to reclaim the narrative. According to several reporters who cover the royal beat, her team at Clarence House began working on what one aide privately called the charm offensive. It started subtly, human interest features, softer photo shoots, and a well-timed profile in the Sunday Times, highlighting Camilla as the steadfast partner behind the throne. To the casual reader, it looked like a harmless image refresh. But palace insiders insist it was more tactical than tender. She wanted to remind people she was queen, one source told the Daily Mail, and that she wasn't going to be written out of history by Anne's quiet shadow. Still, the tension was palpable. In mid-September, the royal calendar listed a joint appearance between the king and queen at a London art gala. Anne, notably, was expected to attend as well, until, just hours before the event, her office announced a change. Instead of the gala, the Princess Royal visited a children's hospice in Leeds, one that had been a favourite charity of Diana. The move caught the media's attention instantly. "That was no scheduling accident," said royal correspondent Rebecca Hall. "That was Anne reminding the public where loyalty and empathy truly lies." The contrast between the two images dominated every front page the next morning. Camilla in diamonds, flanked by society patrons. Anne, standing in a plain navy coat, bending to speak with a terminally ill child. "It was a PR duel, without a word exchanged," one insider remarked. And everyone knew who won. Inside Buckingham, the mood shifted from subtle rivalry to visible friction. Courtiers began referring to two distinct camps, the Queen's Circle and the Core. The former loyal to Camilla and her media advisors, the latter orbiting around Anne, William, and Catherine. Officially, both groups served the same institution. In practice, they were pulling in opposite directions. "It's a quiet civil war," said a senior palace source. "And it's being fought with appearances, smiles, and headlines." For Camilla, whose reign had been built on surviving controversy, this new form of challenge was deeply unsettling. "She knows scandal," explained royal commentator Simon Eldridge. "She knows criticism, but she's never faced a rival who refuses to engage." Anne's silence, in that sense, was disarming. It gave Camilla nothing to push against. "You can't outmaneuver someone who doesn't play the game," Eldridge added. But Camilla did move. Her next step was calculated: a televised interview marking the anniversary of the late Queen's passing. The segment, filled with carefully curated emotion, was meant to highlight her devotion to duty and her husband's legacy. Yet, what caught the public eye was not her words, but a brief hesitation when she was asked about Anne. "Oh, she's terribly efficient," Camilla said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "A wonderful support to His Majesty." The clip circulated widely. The tone, some viewers felt, was just sharp enough to hint at something unsaid. Anne's response came days later, in typical Anne fashion, not through a rebuttal, but through presence. She appeared at a Remembrance Day service alongside Catherine, both women dressed in nearly identical black coats, their brooches glinting under the November light. Photographers noted the synchronicity. Commentators called it the double wall of duty. "It was a show of unity that didn't need explanation," wrote the Telegraph. And it left Camilla looking, quite literally, out of frame. Behind palace walls, Charles was said to be exhausted. Aides described the king as visibly weary, caught between loyalty to his wife and reliance on his sister. He reportedly pleaded for calm during a private family dinner, urging everyone to keep the focus on the work. But, as one court insider noted, the problem is they are working. They're just not working together. Meanwhile, social media was feasting on the drama. Hashtags like number T-Man and number Silent Crown trended for days. Younger audiences, often indifferent to royal coverage, found themselves unexpectedly invested. "It's like watching history rewrite itself in real time," one comment read. Another user summed up the public mood. "Camilla talks about unity. Anne shows it. Even veteran palace observers admit the tone within the family has changed. This is no longer about popularity," said Dr. Holt. "It's about legitimacy. The monarchy's emotional anchor has shifted, and it's not where it used to be." Yet, for all the speculation, neither side has made an overt move. Camilla continues her media engagements, smiling for cameras. Anne continues her relentless schedule, unbothered and unflinching. But the undertone is unmistakable. Something is building, something that could redefine who truly commands the moral center of the crown. And according to sources inside the royal press office, an internal memo, marked private and confidential, may soon reveal how deep that divide runs. Because in the coming weeks, a new document is expected to surface. one that mentions a plan neither Camilla nor Charles may have authorized. And when that happens, insiders warn, the quiet rivalry might turn into open confrontation, and the institution that prides itself on composure could face its most personal reckoning yet. It began with a whisper, one that moved faster than any official statement could. Late on a rainy Thursday evening, journalists across Fleet Street received anonymous tips about a sensitive internal file from Buckingham Palace. Within hours, the leak broke across major tabloids, a document marked Succession Contingency, Post-Charles Plan. The file, dated several months earlier, outlined scenarios for maintaining public stability in the event of the king's long-term incapacity. It named key figures expected to ensure continuity. Among them, the Princess Royal. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. According to The Guardian's royal correspondent, the document described Anne as Senior Stabilizing Advisor, a position that, while unofficial, granted her considerable influence over the royal agenda. Even more striking was a handwritten note scrawled in the margin, "Legacy must survive, even without the crown." The handwriting, analysts claimed, matched Anne's. The palace moved quickly to contain the fallout. A spokesperson insisted the file was merely a theoretical planning document, standard procedure for all royal households. But the damage was done. Every morning paper carried the same subtext. Was Princess Anne preparing for a monarchy without the king? Inside the palace, tensions spiked. Camilla's camp was said to be furious, demanding to know how such a file could have left the archives. It made her look irrelevant, a Clarence House insider admitted. It positioned Anne as the real anchor, and that was intolerable. William reportedly stayed silent, refusing to comment publicly, while Catherine appeared at a children's charity visit the next day, smiling, gracious, but noticeably guarded. Observers noted that she wore a small gold bracelet gifted by Anne years ago, as if to signal quiet solidarity. Meanwhile, Anne carried on as though nothing had happened. At a rural agricultural fair, when asked by a reporter about the leak, she replied simply, "I don't deal in hypotheticals." The clip went viral within minutes. "That's not denial," one journalist tweeted. "That's dominance." Behind closed doors, however, senior courtiers were rattled. "The problem wasn't the document," said one official. "It was what it implied, that someone inside the family is already thinking about what comes next." The Queen Consort, facing her lowest favourability rating since the coronation, reportedly demanded a reassertion of authority. But Charles, weary and unwell, declined to intervene. Analysts described the moment as a constitutional crisis wrapped in a PR war. Dr. Marianne Holt summarized it bluntly. "Anne doesn't seek power, but power finds her. And now the institution must decide whether to resist her or rely on her." Public reactions split sharply. Older monarchists praised Anne's foresight. Younger audiences saw it as proof of dysfunction. Yet one truth united both camps. She had become indispensable. The woman once dismissed as the monarchy's silent workhorse was now its unspoken guardian. By week's end, the palace tightened security, restricted press access, and ordered an internal inquiry into the leak. But nothing could undo the image already cemented in the public mind, that while Charles faltered and Camilla floundered, Anne stood unshaken, holding the monarchy's line alone. And somewhere, tucked within that leaked dossier, one quiet sentence continued to haunt observers. "Legacy must survive, even without the crown," because if that was indeed Anne's hand, then the future of the monarchy might already be in hers. The evening sky over Windsor carried a soft golden hue, the kind that always seemed to follow Princess Anne. 1 year after the scandal, after the leaks, after the quiet storm that shook the monarchy's foundation, the Princess Royal appeared once again before the cameras. This time, it wasn't controversy drawing her into the light, it was her 75th birthday. The setting was deliberate, a modest state ceremony at St. George's Chapel, attended by senior royals, and a restrained but emotional crowd. There were no speeches about crisis, no mentions of Andrew, no whispers of Camilla's failed campaigns. Instead, there was stillness, the kind that comes when history finally exhales. Anne arrived in a tailored dove-grey coat, gloved, poised, and unmistakably regal. But it was what rested upon her head that seized every camera in the courtyard. The same diamond tiara that had set this story in motion. Only this time, the light caught another reflection beside her, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, walking step for step at her side. Reporters noted how their presence seemed almost choreographed. William stood a few paces behind, offering the faintest nod as Anne approached the dais. Charles was absent, citing health reasons. Camilla attended, though quietly, her expression unreadable. For the first time in months, the power dynamic felt visibly rearranged, not through rebellion, but through grace. When the choir fell silent, William took the lectern. His words, brief but weighted, seemed aimed beyond the chapel walls. "There are those," he said, "who serve not for recognition, but because duty is the only language they speak." Cameras caught his glance toward Anne, who lowered her eyes, her expression calm, almost maternal. That single line became the headline across Britain by dawn. William honors the silent one. But the subtext was clear. The monarchy's emotional center had shifted again, and it now rested with the woman who never sought it. Later that evening, in an off-record comment to the BBC, a senior aide revealed something remarkable. The king had privately instructed that all official family portraits henceforth include Anne by his side, designated as Guardian of Legacy. It wasn't a title, it was acknowledgement. The monarchy's quiet debt finally paid. Public reaction was overwhelming. Thousands gathered online to celebrate the silent revolution, as fans dubbed it. Others saw it as poetic symmetry, the daughter of Elizabeth II reclaiming not the throne, but the respect that sustains it. "She reminded us what royalty used to mean," wrote historian Dr. Holt. "Not power, not glamour, but constancy." And as the ceremony concluded, Catherine was seen gently adjusting the edge of Anne's cloak. A fleeting gesture, but one that summed up the new order. Partnership over rivalry, legacy over ego. The tiara shimmered one last time under the setting sun, its diamonds scattering light across the chapel floor. No speeches, no fanfare. Just a shared understanding that the storm had passed, and something steadier had taken its place. Because in the end, Princess Anne didn't rescue the monarchy with statements or strategies. She did it the only way she ever knew, by showing up, standing straight, and letting duty speak for itself. Thank you for staying with this special report, the story of how one silent royal redefined the meaning of endurance. If you've followed this far, you know the crown's future no longer belongs to noise, but to quiet strength. Subscribe for our continuing coverage of royal power, legacy, and reform, because as insiders say, this may be the calm after the storm, but in the House of Windsor, silence is never the end. It's only the pause before history moves again.